Hey, everybody. Welcome to my next episode on the fighting crimes of all kinds here in Maricopa County, the attorney's office. They post the alerts and I capture them. And my goal is to capture them each month and then present it on a monthly basis. This way I can keep track and plan accordingly. And then y'all can attend and watch these as well as the replays that are available. So what I want to do is go through the June successes. And before I do that, I want to do the don't repost campaign. Okay. It's very important not to just take video, or if you see a crime going on, don't just take video, contact the law enforcement. They'll jump in and help out. And that's what they're there for. And they're here to protect everyone. Okay. This is a teen violence issue. So we really want to watch out for our children. I know I've been streaming a trial the last couple of days, and I want to make sure that I get that message out there. Adults of all kinds, whether you're parents, legal guardians, neighbors, just watch out what's going on with the children in around your area. Your sphere of influence can grow the more people you meet. So it's better to reach out and have multiple eyes on your kids and be cognizant of where they're at and what they're doing, and make sure that you're aware of their devices that they're using. Let them know that you're safe to talk to. You love them, and that you want to be able to be comfortable enough to talk to you about things that are going on in the high school hub, is how I refer to it, because it's a whole different world in high school and even in younger years. But I want the kids to be able to come to you and talk to you as parents. So if you have to start the conversation, mention, hey, Rob just did a post and he wanted us to start the talk. So you as adults can initiate the conversation with your kids, and even the teenage years, they may be reluctant, but you need to let them know that you're still there for them, and make sure that they're aware that things are happening around the country, around the world, actually, that could happen at any time, any place, anywhere. So want to be safe, take care of them, and make sure that you're aware of what they're doing and what their whereabouts are at all times. So now that I got that spiel out of the way, which is very important, I should say, let's go into each of the successes that the June 2025 have been posted on the Maricopa County Attorney's website. So again, I've used fighting crime of all kinds because our county attorney is going after multiple criminals for various reasons, crimes that they've committed. So let's start with the first one. This was posted on June 2nd, titled "Gang Members Sentenced in Drive-By Shooting That Killed a Child." So it was in Phoenix, and Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell has announced that Alfred Gary, Freddie Patterson, and Charles Adams had been sentenced for a deadly gang-related drive-by shooting. In March 2023, the defendants pulled up alongside a black Impala stopped at a red light near 48th Street and Broadway Road, Tempe. There were 7 people in the other car, most of whom were children and teens. The defendants fired more than 20 rounds into the Impala, killing a 5-year-old boy. A 17-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl were wounded. The defendants then picked up dinner before returning to the crime scene to take a video, which they used to brag about the shooting with fellow gang members. During the investigation, police discovered that Patterson and Adams, both documented members of a Phoenix street gang, had an issue with a rival gang member who was a passenger in the other vehicle. All 3 defendants pleaded guilty to a range of felony offenses, including second-degree murder, drive-by shooting, conspiracy to commit drive-by shooting, and aggravated assault. Gary was sentenced to 16 years in prison, while Patterson and Adams were each sentenced to 30 years in prison. Patterson and Adams were given an additional 5 years in prison for a separate drive-by shooting in Phoenix just 2 days earlier. That incident, they shot into a car with a mother, her 3-year-old son, and 14-year-old daughter inside. No one was hurt. Those who act, this is a quote, "those who act with no regard for human life have no place in our society," said County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. "My office will continue to work with law enforcement to rid our streets of illegal gang activity and put an end to the terror it brings to our community." And there are links in here that you can go look up additional information, more details. But Once again, gang member activity is unacceptable, especially when you're hitting, impacting lives of children and ending their lives. Not acceptable. And I'm so glad that they were brought to justice. The next one was posted on June 4th, titled "Killer Who Murdered Wife and Daughter Will Live Out His Life in Prison." Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell announced today that Brandon Andres Batista Torres has been sentenced to natural life in prison for the murders of his girlfriend and her 4-year-old daughter. In June 2019, Glendale police received a 911 call in which Torres claimed an intruder had broken into his home and shot his girlfriend and her daughter. Torres said he then took his toddler son to his parents' house but would be returning to the scene. After returning, came up a new story that he had struggled with the intruder, during which the gun discharged and the intruder fled. When asked why it took 3 hours to report the crime, Torres said he feared being blamed. Torres has a history of domestic abuse, including previous incidences in which he had threatened the girlfriend with a firearm. Torres pleaded guilty to 1 count of first-degree murder, a Class 1 felony, and 1 count of manslaughter, a Class 1 felony. Quote, "This was a horrific and cowardly act of domestic violence that claimed 2 innocent lives," said County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. "He no longer deserves the chance to walk freely in this community. I'm truly grateful to the Glendale Police Department and my prosecutors at MCAO who made sure he will spend his life where he belongs." Kind of brings up the old adage of an eye for an eye, right? So it's good that he's off the streets. I just feel horrible that his girlfriend and her daughter are no longer alive. The next one is posted on June 9th. Street race ends in death. 2 drivers will each spend 7 years in prison for the crime. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell announced today that Jacari Barksdale and Emmanuel Cervantes have each been sentenced to 7 years in prison for their roles in a fatal street racing crash that claimed the life of a 32-year-old man. In May 2021, Barksdale and Cervantes, both 17 years old at the time, were racing in Avondale at speeds over 100 miles per hour on South Avondale Boulevard near West Broadway Road. Barksdale BMW struck a Ford F-150 that was turning through the intersection. The impact split the truck in 2, killing the driver instantly. The investigation revealed that the race was prearranged by text message and recorded by bystanders. Witnesses and cell phone video confirmed Barksdale's BMW and a Dodge Charger driven by Cervantes were racing side by side when the BMW collided with the truck carrying the victim driver. Cervantes fled the scene after narrowly avoiding the crash. Quote, "This wasn't a tragic accident. It was the direct result of reckless choices and a complete disregard for human life," said County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. "This case is a stark reminder that street racing is not a game. It's a crime with deadly consequences." Both teens were prosecuted as adults. Barksdale pleaded guilty to 1 count of manslaughter, a Class 2 felony, and 1 count of aggravated assault, a Class 3 felony. Cervantes pleaded guilty to 1 count of manslaughter, a Class 2 felony, and 1 count of leaving the scene of a fatal accident, a Class 2 felony. This ties right into the upfront statement I made. We have to know where our children are at. We have to be involved in their lives. The lines of communication have to be open at all times. These are 2 17-year-olds who, because they were racing, and we'll call it drag racing from the old days, a 32-year-old man lost his just because they thought it'd be more fun to drag race with no realization of what could happen. I'm just so glad that they're off the streets. The next post is June 10th. Statement from Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. "An attack on a police officer is never appropriate." This is a quote. "These men and women risk their own lives and safety to do the job we've asked them to do. This afternoon, people in the area of 67th Avenue and Sherrill Drive made a bad decision and an officer was hurt. While their assumption that he was involved in an immigration enforcement was wrong, let me be clear. Assaulting a police officer or any other person or damaging property for any reason is not acceptable, and those who do so will be held accountable for their unlawful actions. So a police officer who's a peace officer putting their lives on the line day in and day out gets injured because these people misassumed what his role was. No matter what his role was, he's still representing the law. So I'm glad to put this statement out there, and it is frustrating to see stuff like this. But I'm glad that she put a statement out there, which I'm sharing with you all so that you have an understanding of what's going on. She's looking out for her officers that are in the law enforcement also, not just going after criminals, but also watching out for our people, our law enforcement people. The next one was posted on June 13th. Protester charged for assaulting a police officer. Again, assaulting a police officer. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell announced today that Tyler Heidi has been charged with 3 felony charges stemming from a protest in Peoria earlier this week. On June 10th, Heidi was involved in a protest in Peoria. During the course of the protest, Heidi is seen on body-worn camera footage assaulting a Peoria police officer. Heidi resisted arrest from the multiple officers, but was eventually arrested, booked, and released to pretrial supervision. Her next court appearance is currently set for June 25th. I assume it might be his next court appearance because I don't think, unless Tyler Heidi is a female, could be. The charges filed are the following: 2 counts of aggravated assault, a class 4 felony, 1 count of resisting arrest, a class 2 felony. Heidi also currently faces a criminal charge related to a protest on the campus of Arizona State University last year. A note, a criminal charge is merely an accusation and the defendant is presumed innocent until and unless proven guilty. That's a statement that goes for all of these, okay? Unless they've been tried, found guilty, and now we're spending time in prison. These are just accusations at this point. Peaceful protests, people. Peaceful protests. We're not taking away from your First Amendment rights. I'm here to be online talking. So keep that in mind. You can protest what you want. That's fine, but it needs to be peaceful. Make your arguments verbally without outrage or causing physical harm. The next one is posted on June 14th. Mom sentenced for rampage at Peoria Park. Brandy Gotch ran over a young girl's leg with her pickup truck. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell announced today that Brandy Gotch was sentenced to 10 years in prison for driving her pickup truck through a park full of kids, ultimately running over a 12-year-old girl. Gotch pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated assault, a class 2 dangerous felony. In February 2024, Gotch's children were fighting with each other at West Green Park in Peoria. Other kids at the park were egging them on and recording the altercation. These are young kids doing what the older kids are doing. See what I'm saying? The older kids need to set examples for the younger kids. They shouldn't be doing this, videotaping horrific incidences or fights or anything. As this was happening, Gotch arrived at the park to pick up her kids. While walking them back to her truck, a boy on the playground called her a name. Gotch went over to him and started pulling him by his hair. A second boy called her a name, and she chased him around the park with a stick. Gotch then got into her truck with her kids. The second boy stood behind the truck, dancing and mocking her. He eventually moved away to stand by his sister. At that point, Gotch backed out of the parking space, revved her engine, and drove right at the boy and his sister. He was able to jump out of the way, but his sister's leg was run over. Gotch kept driving through the park where more than a dozen other children were at the time, including some who had to run to get out of the truck's path. She then drove away from the park and was arrested at home a short time later. Quote, this could have been a much more tragic situation. Thankfully, the worst injury in this was a sprained ankle and some bad scrapes and bruises, said Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. Even when angry or frustrated, it's up to adults to act like adults. It is never okay to take our rage out on kids or out on a kid. So once again, the mother inappropriately acted. Okay. He could have called the law enforcement at the time, said that there were these kids in this park causing issues. That's an option. She had her kids safe in the truck. She did not have to back up. And it's kind of like road rage on the highway, right? Someone cuts you off, someone's driving too slow, those kind of things. Take a deep breath, realize what's going on, and know that you're an adult and this isn't who you are. It's in the moment, but it's still unacceptable. So I feel horrible for the child and I feel horrible for the mother, but there has to be some accountability, which is what happened here. She was sentenced, so that was good, for 10 years. Okay. That's big when the child had a sprained ankle during this process, right? So that's a long time. That's more than the 17-year-olds got for doing the drive-bys. They got 7 years each. So it's kind of weird the way the justice system works, but at the same time, we're dealing with children. So we need to be much more cognizant of what's going on around us and watching out for everybody. That's why I say the neighborhood watch is so important. And don't let yourself get caught up in children bad mouthing you or causing words, sharing, saying bad words. Be above that, raise above that because you can, right? The next post is was on June 16th. Wife gets decades in prison for killing husband. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell has announced that Ivanka Koleva has been sentenced to 20 years in prison after pleading guilty to one count of second-degree murder for the death of her husband, Stefan Koleva. In November 2023, Gilbert police were asked to conduct a welfare check on Stefan Koleva. One of his adult children who had come into town for Thanksgiving had not seen him since arriving several days earlier. Once inside the home, officers found the deceased victim under a bed with multiple gunshot wounds and a stab wound. His body had been wrapped in plastic. The victim's children told police that their mother, Ivanka Koleva, had been acting strangely over the last several days and asked them not to go inside the home. They also said she had recently been involved in a car crash, which they believed was a suicide attempt. Police reviewed security video from a neighbor's house, which showed the defendant and the victim entering their home a few days prior. The defendant was then seen coming and going, but the victim was not seen again. Inside the home, police found evidence that the defendant had cleaned the crime scene, hid the victim's belongings, and attempted to repair a bullet hole in the bedroom door. Police also found the murder weapon in the vehicle the defendant was driving at the time of the car crash. Quote, this wasn't just a murder. It was a betrayal that shattered a family, said County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. These children came home to see their parents and instead discovered a crime scene. No one should ever have to endure that kind of horror, especially at the hands of their own mother. These are adult children, so they have to deal with this now the rest of their lives. They're not young children that may not understand. These are adult children. So once again, this is going to impact the rest of their lives, no matter what age you are. And I was very close with my mom, extremely close. She didn't have a mean bone in her body at all. So when I hear about stories where mothers do things like this, there's so many options available. There's help. There's 911. There's services available in the Arizona area, and I'm sure in other states too. Divorce is an option these days, obviously. So, there's no reason to take a life. I'm sorry. There may be circumstances that I'm not aware of, but at the same time, bottom line, you don't get to take a life. It's unacceptable. So she received a sentence of 20 years in prison and she pleaded guilty, I was grateful for that. She didn't make a drawn out issue. It's just not acceptable behavior. This one was posted on June 20th. Predator offers child sex abuse materials in exchange for sex with kids. It's gut wrenching to me whenever children are involved. It's horrific to me. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell announced today that Christopher Delaney has been sentenced to 28 years in prison for offering child sex abuse materials, also known as CSAM, as payment to sexually abuse two children. In June 2023, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received a cyber tip about comments Delaney made on a dating app named Sniffies. A Chandler police detective began investigating and emailed Delaney while posing as the parent of two children, a 7-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl. During his conversations with the detective, Delaney detailed how he wanted to sexually abuse the two children, including drugging and tying them up. In return, he promised to pay with a flash drive of CSAM. Delaney said he was on probation and wearing an ankle monitor, so the children would need to be brought to his home. The undercover detective agreed to drive them over in a van where the abuse could occur. When the detective parked in the driveway, Delaney came out carrying a rape kit containing zip ties, melatonin gummies, body oil, lotion, soda, whiskey, and weed pens. He also had a flash drive with more than 100 files of CSAM on it. Delaney pleaded guilty to one count of sexual exploitation of a minor, a Class 2 felony, and dangerous crime against children. This case, quote, "This case is a reminder of the dangers our children face and the lengths some will go to exploit them," said Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. Thanks to the Chandler Police Department and the prosecution team, this defendant was stopped before he could carry out his plans on a real child. Now, that's kudos to the investigator and the police department and to the county attorney's office. These children were made up, right? So that's what I was saying about parents watching out what their children are online, what apps they're using, who they're chatting with, who they're seeing online, who they might be meeting up with. This is all unacceptable behavior, and it takes an adult to watch out for younger kids. We're talking 7, 11-year-olds, and this person wanted to abuse them. So at no age, children are safe. So let's bond together. Let's do that neighborhood watch program and enact it today if it isn't already in place. And be cognizant of your neighbors. There could be next door someone who is living a life along these lines that you're not aware of. But if you get any kind of stink, you better call it in because it's unacceptable behavior. I mean, we've heard way too much in the news, and I'm so grateful that this was a kind of a quote unquote sting operation. So there were no children actually involved. But this gentleman, we don't even know what has happened in his past. So it's very frustrating and scary to me. The next posting was on June 23rd. Awataki attacker sentenced to life in prison for triple murder. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell has announced that Chase Scott Chrisman received 3 consecutive natural life sentences after pleading guilty to the murders of Marissa Honeycutt, Samuel Lott, and Anthony Fredrickson Cicerelli. In July 2024, Phoenix Fire responded to an Awataki apartment complex near 48th Street and Warner Road. Upon arrival, fire crews saw smoke coming from the apartment, with the door left unlocked. When they entered, they discovered 3 deceased individuals in a single bedroom, and Phoenix police were called to take over the scene. Further investigation revealed that one victim was stabbed, and the other victim suffered gunshot wounds. Evidence, including text messages, Chrisman's blood at the scene, and location data from his phone placing him near the crime scene, established that Chrisman and an accomplice had planned a drug-related robbery when the murders took place. Chrisman pleaded guilty to the following charges: 3 counts of first-degree murder, a Class 1 dangerous felony, 3 counts of armed robbery, a Class 2 dangerous felony, 1 count of misconduct involving weapons, a Class 4 felony. Quote, This was a particularly vicious act, with one victim being stabbed nearly 30 times, said County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. This defendant tried to cover his tracks by setting the crime scene on fire. I'm grateful to the Phoenix Police Department for their investigative work and our prosecutors who made sure he was unable to escape justice. Again, this ties right into monitoring text messages, understanding where your children are at. These are adults, and they were involved with somehow, some way, some um, drugs, lack of a better term. Don't know the whole story on that, but it's unacceptable. You don't take lives. And I'm grateful that he received 3 natural life sentences consecutively, which puts him away for a very long time. But the horrific tragedy on these 3 people, no matter what they did or were doing or were about to do, is unacceptable. And again, weapons don't hurt people. People using weapons hurt people. So I'm not against carrying a gun or a knife. I'm against the people who use them inappropriately and take human lives or cause damage to property. I hope I'm clear on that. Not everybody should be given a gun if there's a reasons why against the law, if they're whatever. But those that do carry need to be responsible users of those weapons. And they are considered weapons, whether they're for protection or otherwise, they can be used. The next posting was on June 24th. Bus stop shooting leads to prison for gunman. A man was shot 17 times and a baby was hit by a stray bullet. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell announced today that 2 defendants have been sentenced for shooting that seriously injured a baby and a man. In May 2023, the man was waiting for a bus after work near 43rd Avenue and Thomas Road when Miguel Seja and Zachary Carrillo approached him. After the victim looked up from his phone and made eye contact, Seja pulled up his shirt to flash a gun in his waistband and asked the victim if he was ready to die. Fearing he would be robbed, the victim started heading to a nearby gas station. As he tried to walk away, he felt the first bullet strike his body. He pulled out his own gun and fired back. More than 24 shots were exchanged between the 2 defendants and the victim. A stray bullet went into a car stopped at a red light and struck a 6-month-old baby in the head. The bullet that hit the baby was traced back to Seja's gun. The little girl suffered a fractured skull, and the man suffered numerous injuries from being shot 17 times. Both victims survived. Seja pleaded guilty to attempt to commit second-degree murder, a Class 2 dangerous felony, and aggravated assault, a Class 2 dangerous felony. He was sentenced to 21 years in prison. Carrillo pleaded guilty to attempt to commit secondary-degree murder, a Class 2 dangerous felony. He was sentenced to 10.5 years in prison. Quote, "It's a miraculous that the 2 innocent people, including a baby caught in the crossfire, didn't lose their lives that day," said Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. "These criminals showed a blatant indifference for life, all because of a perceived wrong look. Anyone who carries out this type of senseless violence in Maricopa County will be held accountable." I have to say it, amen to her. I want people to be aware of these true life crime stories. They need to be going on around them. The next posting was on June 30th. Husband indicted for wife's murder. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell has announced the indictment of Justin Davidson on 1 count of first-degree murder, a Class 1 felony, for the death of his wife, Daniela Crosby Davidson. On June 11, 2025, Crosby Davidson was found deceased in her room at Eternal Springs of Gilbert, a long-term care facility where she was being treated for advanced dementia. Davidson, who had been visiting from California, was staying in the room with her at the time. Facility staff contacted Gilbert police after discovering the victim deceased and noting concerning circumstances, Investigators conducted interviews and reviewed evidence that led to Davidson's arrest. Davidson is being held on a $1 million bond with a trial tentatively set for February 2026. Hashtag here, a criminal charge is merely an accusation and the defendant is presumed innocent until and unless proven guilty. He's being held on a $1 million bond. That speaks volumes to me. And if his wife who had dementia, my mother had dementia, it's not an easy to deal with, but it is manageable. And she was in a care facility, long-term care facility. He just had nice to her, be a, it's not like all people with dementia are violent. So the facility's there to take care of her. So I don't understand what his plan was or what the reason was. Obviously, we'll find out more at the trial in February 2026, but it hurts me again to hear these stories. They're just unacceptable. Somebody who's innocent with dementia, they have dementia. It's not their fault. They're living their lives without realizing what's going on around them, depending on the level of dementia they have or what type. And my mom had subcortical dementia. So it's a different type where she can remember from the past, but more current stuff she couldn't remember as much currently. So, but I loved her. So I took care of her. It was the right thing to do from my perspective. So those are our June alerts that occurred in the month of June 2025. You saw some that were from the past that were brought to light now because investigations take time. You saw some that were literally this month that took place and they already had them in custody and they had a bond. So the innocent people that are impacted by these are what's the horrible part about this. They're not even involved with any issues or concerns. So I don't understand why anybody would do anything to hurt anybody. You know what I mean? Intentionally. So, and then unintentionally, people are hurt anyway. So we just have to be aware of what's going on. I remember the report on the two 17-year-olds. They're 17. So like the trial I'm covering, he was 16 at the time, I believe. So these are children. Okay. I don't care if they're in high school, they're still children. I remember when I was in high school, right? I wasn't an adult yet. I wasn't able to do anything until I became an adult. And even then I had a lot of learning to do. So I just hope that me sharing this on a monthly basis, people are getting this information and also reaching out to this websites and the YouTube channels that are available. Be aware of what's going on in your local areas because you never know if it's going to come knocking at your door. So fighting crimes of all kinds, as you saw, we cover that Maricopa County's Attorney's Office covers multiple types of crimes. So I'm grateful to be able to have done this. I need to update this last slide, but thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody attending, and I will end the stream now, but I thank you all very much for watching. Thank you. Be ready for my out of stream.